This presentation addresses some of the issues women face in today's society, by Tyler-Jane Lumsden. Women. We make up around 50% of the population. The exact numbers in real time can be accessed via the link below. Although circumstances vary greatly from country to country, women are still systematically oppressed to this day. We are mothers, sisters, wives, partners, and daughters. We are nurturers, life-givers, and creators. This presentation will touch on some of the systems of oppression women face today. Let's start off by giving some meaning to the word patriarchy. As defined by the Oxford Dictionary, the patriarchy is a society, system, or country that is ruled or controlled by men. It is important to acknowledge that the patriarchy is not simply a reference nor an attack on men. Patriarchy refers to the systems in our society which both contribute to the oppression of women in many forms. Many feminists and activists work hard to challenge and dismantle the patriarchy and the deeply ingrained misogyny that exists within the society we now live. Audre Lorde once said, "I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own." Let's start off with what some may consider a first world problem: the gender pay gap. According to the World Economic Forum, the global gender pay gap will take around 202 years to close. The World Economic Forum ranked 150 countries by their gender wage gaps during a conclusive study that produced some astounding results. On average, globally, women are paid 63% of what men are paid. In some countries, however, women are still not even allowed to work as they please or have access to their own money. Yemen, Syria, and Iraq came in as having the largest pay gaps, with women not even being paid 30% of what men receive, given they are even allowed to work. There is no one country in the world where women earn as much or more than men. Even in Iceland, which scored the best for gender pay equality, still possess a 33% pay gap on average. Only 34% of managers worldwide are women. To the right of this slide, you can see a graph constructed of some data collected by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. The data shows the wage gap has only widened since 1996. A recent study actually showed that while women have only become significantly more educated and substantially more employable in recent years, the gender pay gap has failed to improve. It is important to acknowledge that the gender pay gap is not the same as unequal pay. The gender pay gap is the difference between the average wages of men and women working full-time or in the same line of work doing the same job for the same amount of hours. In a woman's case, that is almost always less than their male counterparts. Let's move on to an issue that's had extensive media coverage lately, and for good reason: domestic and sexual violence against women. More than one woman a week is killed in Australia by a man. In an overwhelming number of cases, the crime is perpetrated by a man that is known to her, and even more commonly by a current or former partner. 63 women were killed as a result of domestic violence last year in Australia. Then we have the cases of women such as Eurydice Dixon and Jill Meagher, who were stalked, raped, and murdered by total strangers. Women are being assaulted, raped, and murdered at an alarming rate, not only in Australia, but worldwide. Victim blaming. When men were getting king hit at licensed venues and in the street, Laws were changed to protect victims and harsher penalties were introduced for offenders. Every time a woman is murdered and raped, we are told to be more careful. Be vigilant, watch our surroundings, be careful, watch what we wear and where we go. Women are constantly blamed for the violent crimes men choose to commit against them. Men who violate our consent and trust, men who violate our basic human rights, are too often able to walk free. Classism, racism, and sexism. There is a saying, if your feminism isn't intersectional, then it is not feminism. I think it's important to include an example here of when classism and racism also played a part in sexism. Here we have two mugshots. On the right is 19-year-old Brock Turner, who raped an unconscious woman behind a dumpster. Authorities chose to use his yearbook picture. Brock only served a mere 3 months in prison for his despicable crimes. On the left, we have a woman from a lower socioeconomic community, and a woman of colour. This mugshot is the image authorities chose to use in the media. This woman was handed down a harsher criminal charge than a convicted rapist, simply for taking her child to work and allowing him to play at the playground across from her workplace while she watched from afar. Women's rights around the world. In Saudi Arabia, women were still banned from driving until 2018. Women are still not allowed to swim in public swimming pools, dress as they please, make any legal decision without a male guardian's permission, and play sports as they wish. Up until recently, Chinese families would abort baby girls late term as it was believed they brought shame to a family. This resulted in a gross overpopulation of males, so much so that wives were purchased from Korea for large sums of money. Women are still treated like a commodity. They are still bought and sold around the world today. In India, one woman is killed every hour for not bringing enough dowry to a husband. Over 50% of Indian men and women believe that sometimes women deserve a beating. Countries governed by a dictatorship, such as North Korea, Zimbabwe, and Uzbekistan, relinquish the rights of its citizens to assemble. Therefore, women cannot even protest for their rights without being persecuted or, in some countries, stoned to death. Yes, this is still happening in 2019. This presentation has covered just a few issues women face today. Being a woman in today's society can be pretty scary. I will leave you with a parting quote from a book, Unspeakable Things by Lauren Penny. I believe that if anything can save us in this fraught and dazzling future, it is the rage of women and girls, of freaks and queers and sinners. I believe that the revolution will be feminist, and that when it comes, it will be more intimate and more shocking than we have ever dared to imagine.